Hi, I'm Pam and I'm here to talk about video games. Today I'm continuing with my favorite games of all time, this time covering numbers 70 to 66. This part of the list has a little bit of everything. First, at 70 is a lovely and emotionally stirring game that looks at war in a much more personal way than games usually do.
Valiant Hearts: The Great War was developed by Ubisoft and released in 2014. It tells the story of 4 different characters, and 1 dog, during the course of World War I. It plays as a puzzle platformer, but manages to feel different depending on who you're playing, as each character has some unique ability based on their role in the war. Freddy, the American, can cut through barbed wire fences with the giant wire cutters he carries. Anna, the Belgian battlefield nurse, gets some of the most unique segments in the game as she heals people with a rhythm game. There are also these amazing driving segments where you have to dodge enemy bombs set to classical music. The actions on screen line up with the music perfectly. In addition to being fun to play and offering some interesting puzzles, the game is amazingly heartfelt and emotional. It tells stories of conscription tearing families apart and forcing people into a war they don't support, but also of characters voluntarily enlisting when they don't have to. It's grounded in some real history, as collectibles open up facts about people, places, and things from the war. Valiant Hearts is from Ubisoft Montpellier, which I honestly think puts out their best work. I wish Ubisoft would dedicate more time and effort to these lovely smaller games, as they come up with a lot of very creative and memorable games and have a real knack for designing levels around music.
Next is an action-packed beat-em-up based on a very popular cartoon franchise.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time was developed by Konami and released in arcades in 1991, and later for Super Nintendo in '92. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up. Shredder and Krang steal the Statue of Liberty, and it's up to the heroes in a half-shell to travel through past, present, and future in order to defeat them and get it back. When it comes to beat-em-ups, this is one of the best. As an arcade game, it's great. Running into a 4-player cabinet is always a treat. The Turtles all play slightly differently and have their own strengths and weaknesses. Even on the Super Nintendo, Turtles in Time is a lot of fun to play alone or with a friend, and introduces new game modes like a time trial and a battle mode. The levels look great and have a lot of variety. My favorite levels are the ones where they change up the perspective, like in Neon Knight Riders, where you ride a hoverboard through a flashy, vertically scrolling background. Even the more standard levels are a lot of fun though. It's so satisfying to slam an enemy back and forth over your head and then throw them at the screen. One of the bosses even requires that move in order to beat him. To top it all off, the game has an amazing soundtrack that is really catchy and definitely induces some nostalgia.
68 is the first appearance on this list from BioWare, but it's certainly not the last.
Dragon Age Origins was developed by BioWare and released in 2009. It's a role-playing game set in the fictional kingdom of Ferelden. You play a newly initiated Grey Warden, an ancient order which must stand against an oncoming blight of Darkspawn, and solve all the kingdom's problems while you're at it. You get to choose your class, rogue, warrior, or mage, race, human, elf, or dwarf, and background. There are many different origin stories based on this, and some of the events and how people will react to you throughout the game will be impacted by these choices. After loving BioWare's previous game, Mass Effect, Dragon Age was an instant buy for me. It uses a kind of simplified tactical combat system, which is honestly a little clunky, but it's the stories and characters that make me love this game. From Leliana, the charming Orlesian bard, to Shale, the snarky stone golem, the characters made my time speaking to them at camp some of the best moments in the game. And then there was Alistair, the sensitive, slightly awkward Grey Warden who's one of your first companions. Boy, did I fall in love with Alistair. I have never been so devastated in a video game as I was when I found out I couldn't be with Alistair in the end because I wasn't a human noble. Heart broken. Despite the emotional trauma, Dragon Age is a game I've played many times, so I could see how the game went when choosing different origin stories and making new decisions.
Next is a deeply disturbing psychological horror game with a striking aesthetic.
The Cat Lady was developed by Harvester Games and released for PC in 2012. It's a psychological horror adventure game that tells the story of Susan Ashworth. When we first meet Susan, she has just swallowed a bottle of sleeping pills. But the death she seeks doesn't come. Instead, she finds herself in a surreal world where she's been chosen to overcome 5 monsters that feed off violence and suffering. The game features a lot of dialogue and some inventory puzzles. The puzzles hit the sweet spot of being challenging while still making sense. Often, you just have to pay close attention to your surroundings. The Cat Lady excels at one of the most important aspects of games for me: atmosphere. I found the game visually stunning and its use of color genius. The majority of the game is in black and white and shows how the real world is an ugly, hopeless place for Susan. Color starts to seep in during the more surreal parts of the game. When the game is at its most violent and disturbing, the environments are suffused with suffocating greens. The sound effects are sharp and often startling, and the music ranges from 9 Inch Nails-esque industrial to classical piano and punctuates the game's important events to great effect. The Cat Lady took me on a journey that was disturbing, psychologically horrifying, and thought-provoking.
66 features a very famous fictional detective and a lot of cases to solve.
Sherlock Holmes: Crimes and Punishments was developed by Frogwares and released in 2014. It's an adventure game that allows you into the mind of the great detective himself. Of course, the great detective is quite an asshole and not very likable at all, so it's a good thing the cases are interesting and the puzzles are extremely well done. Puzzles involve code cracking, use of maps, chemistry. You also have to make deductions on the people you talk to and find out facts about them, as well as pick out when they're lying. For each case, you build a deduction board that contains all the facts you know about a case, and you have to connect them to find out the answer to the mystery. I really like that Crimes and Punishment offers 6 individual cases, which are shorter in length, rather than one large mystery. It really helps the pace of the game, ensures we get to visit lots of different locations, and makes it hard to get bored. And you don't just play as Sherlock. Occasionally you get to play as Watson, or even as the great detective dog, Toby. Crimes and Punishments managed to make me feel like a detective myself and is my favorite of the newer Sherlock Holmes games.
That's it for this episode. I hope you'll be back for the next.
If you missed it, check out the last episode in this series, or watch my comparison of Turtles in Time and Hyperstone Heist. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.